Abdo kul shayuat biwasa muspatemta. Begin all things by first using the all. Greetings, everyone. I am Akmos Akai Riel, commercially known as Michael Farasho, and in this few minutes video, I'd like to share with you an experience I had when I first learned of the standard Form 181 by Chief Nanya Shabuel, registered copyright trademark of the Atsikhataym Nation of Yamasee, who is a master and expert in commercial laws and contracts. Because of Chief Nanya Shabuel and his lovely mate and administrator, Sa Auset Tawiret, many of us were given the remedy to be truly free by claiming our indigenous standing and correcting our commercial status. A heartfelt thanks with respect and gratitude to both Chief and Sa. Abiyud Gador. Now, the SF-181 has been available through the Office of Management and Budget since 1997 when it was first revised. The Office of Management and Budget happens to be the largest office within the Executive Office of the President of the United States that deals specifically with the global census on race and ethnicity that breaks down to categories and definitions of race. Now, as valuable and important the information I'm about to share with you is, most of us don't have a clue as to how much this has been and still is affecting the very fabric of our lives. And whether we believe such a thing does or not, or whether we believe such a thing exists or not, this SF-181 and all its categories and definitions are in play. And when I became aware of this form and its definitions was the moment I almost got blinded by the bright bulbs that turned on for me in that moment. It all finally made sense. It made sense insofar as to why we were purposely and falsely called Blacks and African Americans, Afro-Caribbeans, and many other brands. It also made sense as to why we were treated in such inhumane ways, and worse, killed like wild animals on the streets without any care, concern, or satisfaction by law enforcement and officials. With all of this in mind, let us get to the SF-181 where we can reveal some of its secrets. Here I have my personal copy of the SF-181, which I have already faxed to the Office of Management and Budget and also Social Security Administration. And if we look at the top right here where it says ethnicity and race identification, it's important to understand before we move forward that you do have the legal and lawful right to self-identify as to which category or categories of race and ethnicity you choose to identify with. No, you're not going to go to jail for identifying yourself. However, if you choose not to self-identify legally or lawfully, then you'll be at the mercy of those who identify you by their own visual observation of who they think you are and not who you say you are. With that said, here we see the 5 major categories and definitions, and also where it says check as many as apply. As you can see, I have checked American Indian or Alaska Natives because the definitions do apply, which is a person having origins in any of the original peoples of North and South America, including Central America, and who maintains tribal affiliation or community attachments. I am indigenous, being of Garifuna descent, which are the original dark-skinned, copper-toned, curly-haired Arawaks and Caribs that were long here on Turtle Island before the colonizers came. The second category is Asian, which is a person having origins in any of the original peoples of the Far East, Southeast Asia, or the Indian subcontinent, including, for example, Cambodia, China, India, Japan, Korea, Malaysia, Pakistan, the Philippine Islands, Thailand, and Vietnam. The third category is Black and African Americans, which is a person having origins in any of the Black racial groups of Africa. Now, this category was a bright bulb of awareness for me. The first thing that stood out for me in that category was that its definitions came to a grinding halt before it really got off to a good start, as if the SF-181 was trying to say that I don't really want to say much about it. The other thing that jumped out for me was that it's the only category without original peoples. The only category without original peoples. As I move forward with the other categories, you will see. So the only thing that was said, well, what was said instead of original peoples were any of the Black racial groups of Africa. Is there a place called Black groups of Africa? Is there a place called Black Africa? Is there a Black Africa on record? There are no Black racial groups of Africa. It doesn't exist, which means that Blacks and African Americans doesn't exist as a people, but rather as a title, a brand, a status, which is actually saying you have no rights, you're a slave with no standing at law, doesn't exist within the eyes of the law, which is exactly what this SF-181 form is revealing here. Also, President Obama denied being called black when he was greeted by Tom Joyner on his morning show, where Tom said, "It's our first black president of the United States." President Obama replied, "Tom, I don't look at myself as the first black president because the word black has no standing at law." Okay, so just want you to see that so you can let that one sink in a little bit. That was the President Obama. Moreover, the Dred Scott decision that was ruled by the Supreme Court in 1857 was never overturned, which means that Blacks and African Americans' lives don't matter. And here is a short clip that would explain a little bit more of that.
The Dred Scott decision, which was handed down by the Supreme Court in 1857, is one of the most famous or infamous decisions in all of the history of the Supreme Court. And it arose out of some complicated issues, but what it basically had to do with was the power of Congress to prohibit slavery in the Western territories. Dred Scott had been brought as a slave into the territory of Wisconsin, where slavery had been barred by Congress, and later he sued for his freedom on the ground that he had been in a place where slavery had been abolished and therefore should be considered free. And this goes all the way up through various courts, and the Supreme Court eventually rules, no, Dred Scott's not free, because two reasons. One, Congress does not have the right to prohibit slavery in the territories, and this basically declares the Republican Party unconstitutional. The Republican platform, Lincoln's platform, which is to prohibit slavery in the territories, the Supreme Court said you can't do that. Slavery is a right to go anywhere within the country in a territory, not a state. A state can abolish slavery. Illinois did. But the territories which belong to the whole country, slavery is a right to go there. The second principle put down by Chief Justice Taney in the Dred Scott decision was that blacks cannot be citizens of the United States. In a sense, Dred Scott can't even sue because he's not an American. This is one of the best examples of this notion of blacks as aliens. Even though he's born here and everything, he is not an American. The American family, as Taney says, is for white people. And in the most famous sentence in that decision, he says, a black man has no rights which a white man is bound to respect. Now, he's not saying blacks can be killed with impunity. What he's saying is, legally speaking, they are not part of the body politic. They are not part of the we the people that created the Constitution, and therefore they're just outside of the system. So they don't have any rights under the Constitution because the Constitution is for white people.
So as we can see by all of this, that if we continue to classify ourselves as Black or African Americans, then spiritually it's a wrap. It's a wrap for us, because we would have given up our indigenous rights as spiritual people to move forward. And I'm moving forward with the fourth category right now, which is Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander, which is the fourth category, which is a person having origins in any of the original peoples of Hawaii, Guam, Samoa, or other Pacific islands. The fifth and final category, which I've also checked right here, being white. Sometimes I get confused with how the paper is being moved around. Okay, and I have checked white because those definitions do apply, which is a person having origins in any of the original peoples of Europe, the Middle East, or North Africa. I am white because the original peoples of Europe, the Middle East, or North Africa, again, are dark skin, copper tone, woolly hair, or with hair like lamb's wool, that were on the planet everywhere before the continents drifted apart and before the pale leprous Amorite were even thought of. Not to mention that Europe got its name from an Ethiopian princess by the name of Europa, again revealing more of the facts. So in conclusion, according to iPads, the categories on the SF-181 does not denote scientific definitions of anthropological origins, which means that the categories are not based upon skin color, but rather the commercial status of the original peoples of the planet. For many years, Chief Nanya Shabu El, registered copyright trademark of the Atsikhataym Nation of Yamasee Moors, has shed light on the SF-181, being the first of us in correcting his commercial status. He has been teaching this information and more, and has offered many remedy, being a master in commercial laws and contracts. If you have any interest or questions on claiming your indigenous standing or correcting your commercial status, or even curious, simply email a request invitation to aspwebinar@protonmail.com. That's aspwebinar@protonmail.com. You'll also find a link in the description below, and much more. Thank you for watching. Abjid Kedor, Abjid Kedor, Abjid Kedor. White power, white power, white power.